Alp, good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Right, do you think there is a snowball's chance in hell that this bill will become law and actually be used to actually detain and then deport migrants?
I think it will become law. What effect it has, I'm not so sure. However, what I will say is that whatever the effect is going to be, it's not going to be for some time. This legislation will get mauled, as Benedict has said, will get mauled going through Parliament, so we don't know what shape it's going to be. However, it's absolutely essential that we do take hold of the sort of laws that are going to allow us to do this sort of thing. Because if the government doesn't get a grip, the numbers will go up, and likely to be anything up to 90, 100,000 this year. And if they go up at that sort of rate, the numbers dying will also go up. And that's what I think those who are dead set against all this should think about when they resist the impacts, the sort of work that is going to have to go on if we're going to stop.
That's it. They're not on the side of these people who they claim to are victims when these people are paying $5,000 to a people smuggler to get on a rickety boat and risking their lives. And I'm absolutely stunned, actually, whenever we do have those tragic cases of people dying. We had recent, a couple of weeks ago in the Mediterranean, and of course when we had the Channel boats, people drowning as well. I'm amazed that we don't see far more. These are incredibly dangerous passages of water in very difficult conditions, and these boats are extraordinarily rickety and overloaded. But let's talk about what actually happens when people come here, because 45,000 people came here last year. That we know about. That's the key thing. The idea that we're getting all these people and catching them all is a load of nonsense. That's a 60% increase on the year before. As you say, it could be predictions now 85,000 this year, could go as high as 100,000. These are largely young men arriving from countries some, like Albania, some from Afghanistan, is obviously facing a lot of difficulties. And there are some legal routes for people from Afghanistan, although perhaps not very many. And some simply economic migrants from wherever else in the world they come from. And these largely young men are put in these asylum centres, now put into hotels and BBs, dropped around the country. We're paying a small fortune. They're not allowed to work to support them and to pay their hotel bills, sometimes in 4-star hotels, quite absurdly. And then we go through all the legal challenges. We're paying for the government's legal outside and theirs through legal aid. And then we're going to be dealing with all the legal challenges in the courts as well. And goodness knows, we had every single one of those detainees on that plane to Rwanda last year that was supposed to be going off, one by one being taken off as their legal challenges worked. This is going to cost a fortune. £3 billion in the last year to pay for the accommodation and all the legal and asylum processing. And they reckon this is going to cost another £3 billion on top. £6 billion of British taxpayers' hard-earned money going to deal with this crisis. It's absurd, isn't it?
Well, it is absurd, and I suppose you could argue that's why the government knows that it's got to sort it. It isn't just the fact that it's 70% young men. The fact also is that 98% of them don't actually have any identity documents. They don't have a passport. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know what their intentions are. We're taking their word that they are coming from a particular country and that they're being persecuted. That is clearly a nonsense. What we've got to do is detain people, deal with them quickly, and remove them. If what the legislation does is actually delivers on that, then great. But it's going to be September, October before any legislation goes through. It will likely be the end of the year before it's implemented. The fact is that by the end of the year, as we've already said, the numbers will, if anything, be more than double the numbers that came in last year.
And indeed there may be an incentive for people to make the journey sooner because they believe this law could come in. In terms of the legal...
Julia, it's not only an incentive, but the fact is that all those who are now saying, yes, this is wrong and it's cruel and it's this and that. What they're doing is actually encouraging people to come. That is what the problem is. That's why I think, frankly, we should ignore everything that is being said by those who are in favor of open borders.
Yeah.
They would like to have a border that lets in everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Whenever I've questioned, some of these refugee organisations and lots of Labour MPs, well, give me a number. Well, we need to have legal migration routes. OK, what's the number? How many people do we take legally? Because, if we're going to take everyone who wants to come here or who's here, who wants to come here because they want a better life, well, yeah, great. But that's, 5-6 billion people. I'm not quite sure we've got the accommodation or the GPs or the school places for those people and their families. So this is the thing. There are going to be loads of legal challenges. This is, I mean, seriously, if you've got kids not quite sure what they want to do, you really want to send them into immigration law, because there is money to be made. Those streets are paved with gold. But we're going to be paying for most of it, by the way. But they are going to have challenge after challenge after challenge, and some of it will be really very strong. We have a duty. We have signed international treaties where we are supposed to take people who are claiming asylum in this country. There are not very many legal routes, if any, for people to come from most countries. We've got, people from Hong Kong, Afghanistan and Ukraine. There are legal routes right now. Pretty much everywhere else, unless you can get a visa because you're skilled or other reason, you can't come to this country legally. So they're going to say, look, these people have to come this way.
Well, look, they are going to say that, and they'll be wrong, frankly. Last year, we had 70,000 or thereabouts applications for asylum. 45,000 of them came across by boat. Where did the other 30,000 get in? So it's wrong, and simply wrong, to say that there are no safe routes. And if there are going to be some sort of safe routes, if there is going to be a safe route, how exactly is that going to work? It's all very well to call for it. It's totally impractical, frankly, to have the sort of safe routes that the charities and the NGOs are calling for, and the Labour Party is calling for. That is a nonsense. It will not work. We've got to get this act right, and it's got to be implemented, and quickly, if we're not going to see more and more coming, and if we're not going to see more people dying. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And the reality is, of course, that actually these, like you say, largely young men, they would not be the people who would be accepted on these legal and safe routes, realistically. They're not going to be the most sort of, worrying, concerning cases which would get through. Let's also talk about, and it's something that Benedict Spence, who's with me this morning, raised a little bit earlier in the show. Let's talk about legal migration, because this is about tackling illegal migration at a time when, and this is something Migration Watch was writing about a very long time and being castigated in the left-wing media for pointing out, I mean, facts, just simple facts on many occasions, the hundreds and hundreds of thousands, and in total millions of people who've arrived in this country completely legally due to deliberate immigration policy. We know that in the Treasury, the Bank of England, we know that CBI and others, they are really, really pushing for there to be more legal migration routes. Benedict pointed out that there's going to be a deal with the Indians, which is going to allow, far more easier visas for people to come from India to come to work in this country. We are looking at hundreds of thousands of people net arriving in this country every year. But we don't see any more houses built. We don't see any more schools being built. We don't have enough teachers, doctors, nurses, GPs to treat the people who are already here. Even if the government tackles the illegal migration routes, the legal migration routes also has a massive impact on our society, doesn't it?
Most certainly it does. Let me give you one fact. In 20 years, our population grew by 8 million people. 8 million people. That was entirely due to immigration. Immigrants coming here and their children. 8 million people. How many houses does 8 million people require? How many schools? How many additional doctors? Of course, we've got to get a grip. And I would argue that, serious as the optics of illegal immigration are, the fact is that legal migration at the sort of scale that we've got at the moment is even more dangerous for the future of everyone, really, because of the pressures that it brings.
But we're told constantly that this is about growth, and we've got an ageing population. You're having younger, migrants coming, doing the jobs which, frankly, it would appear an awful lot of our British-born people don't want to do. We've got loads of job vacancies right now. That this is about the economy. It increases our GDP. What do you say to that?
Well, what I would say to that is, first of all, there are a lot more people unemployed, out of work, than the official figures would have you believe. There's anything up to 4 million people, frankly, could be persuaded back into work.
When they're hungry enough, Alp, they'll work.
But it's wrong to suggest that it's an unalloyed good.
All right.
That immigration will only add. It doesn't. It's costly. It's very costly, as research after research has demonstrated.
And the cost, of course, is borne by different groups than those who benefit as well. Alp Mehmet, always good to talk to you. You've been on the right side of this for so long, chairman of the Migration Watch UK. Thank you.